Greetings, folks. Richard Fulmer here, and welcome to another Richard's Rock Rambles. So I thought I'd do another short video on music that I've been listening to of late over the past couple of weeks. As usual, it's quite a mixed bag. Some heavy, some light. It just depends what mood I'm in, I guess. Sometimes you want something light, sometimes you want to rock out. Anyway, let's have a look at what I've got here. The first band I'm going to show you is a band that started out as a power trio. Probably one of the best power trios of all time, I reckon. And this album would be a bit of a departure for them. They went into more of a commercial side of things. Got Todd Rundgren as a producer. And of course, I'm talking about Grand Funk, originally known as Grand Funk Railroad. And this album called We're an American Band, with a very sort of minimalist cover there. And that's the back. And then what I always thought was a slightly dodgy inside sleeve. They're all in the buff on with a whole bunch of American flags. Yeah, very patriotic band this, as you can see. And like I said, produced by Todd Rundgren, very different sounding. Of course, this is the band with there's Mel. Sorry about the glare. There's Mel Shecher. There's Craig Frost, the keyboardist. Went on to Bob Seger. There's Mark Farner, guitar, vocals, and harmonica. And there's Don Brewer on vocals and drums, and Mel Shecher there on bass. Yeah, quite a nice album. If you're into the sort of early power trio stuff, this might be a little different for you. The big hit, obviously, is the title track, We're an American Band, which has been covered by numerous people. Really radio-friendly track. Became a massive hit for them. They toured quite a bit on the back of this album. Stop Looking Back, which has got some great keyboard work from Craig Frost. I think he calls it it was on the electric piano, yes. Moog, he also plays Moog. Clavinet, I think, on that track. Organ, Mel Shecher plays bass. And like I said, Don Brewer, vocals, drums, and percussion. Mark Farner, vocals, guitar, acoustic guitar, electric piano, and congas. So that's Stop Looking Back. And then track 3, Creeping. So quite a moody sort of track. Black Licorice, one of my favorite tracks in here. Quite a rocker. If you get the live album Caught in the Act, which is from this tour or around this time, they do a great version of Black Licorice on there. And I think that's with Don Brewer hitting those high notes in the vocals. A lot of melody in this album as well. Obviously made for radio. Then you get to side 2, The Railroad, which is pretty much about being in a band. Ain't Got No Body. Walk Like a Man, that was another hit that came off this album, or fairly big hit. And then Loneliest Rider, which was a sort of a homage to the Indians, the Red Indians in the States. It's got that sort of Indian drumming going on in the beginning. So not a bad album. I've got to be honest, I prefer the early power trio stuff, but of the later work, this is probably one to go for. We're an American Band by Grand Funk. Good production on here from Todd Rundgren, by the way. Next one was a one-off, and at this stage, Glenn Hughes was battling his demons with drugs and whatever. Unfortunately, this didn't really take off, this album. I picked this up in some bargain bin for $6. There were a whole bunch of them, and I thought, geez, let me just grab this. Talking about the band Hughes Thralls, of course. Hughes Thrall, the one half being Glenn Hughes and the other half being Pat Thrall on the guitar. And they're the two gentlemen. That's Glenn Hughes, very young looking Glenn Hughes here. This is in the 80s, early 80s, I think this album came out. 82. And that's Pat Thrall, who would also play with Pat Travers, apart from a few others. This album rocks. The only thing that I don't like about this album is it's got that 80s production to it. That very tinny sound. I reckon if this had come out in the 70s, it would have had a bit more oomph. But there are some great standout tracks on here. I Got Your Number, and I must just say Glenn Hughes' vocals on here are amazing, and his bass work. And if I'm not mistaken, the drummer on here is Frankie Banali from Quiet Riot, the now late Frankie Banali. So that's I Got Your Number, The Look in Your Eye, Beg, Borrow or Steal, it's got a really nice riff to it. Where Did the Time Go, and my favorite track on here, there's a monster riff on this track, Muscle and Blood. You've got to hear the guitar tone on that track from Pat Thrall. Good stuff. Excuse me, I just want to have a sip of coffee. So then we get to side 2. Hold Out Your Life. Who Will You Run To? Which is bit on the sort of commercial side, 80s sounding track that. Coast to Coast, which is a track that I think Glenn Hughes had previously done with his band Trapeze, if I'm not mistaken, but I often am. First Step of Love, and that's the last track. Hughes Thrall, self-titled album. If you see this anywhere in a bargain bin or in a record fair or whatever, grab yourselves a copy. It's well worth it. It's a pity it was a one-off. You know, these guys worked so well together. But as I said, at that stage, old Glenn was, snorting up most of Columbia. Next album, Frank Marino, excellent guitarist from Canada, and his band Mahogany Rush. And this was the first album I ever got from these guys, and then I was hooked. And this one is called World Anthem. There's a very strange cover there. And that's Frank Marino in the front there. Trying to think who the other guys on. I think his brother's on here. Where's the Frank Marino? Guitars, vocals, synthesizers, percussion, and timpani. Paul Harwood, bass guitar. Jimmy Ayoub on drums. Thanks to Phil Beck for the synth solo on Lady. Why did I think his brother was on here? Nah, I got that wrong. Anyway, it's a really good album. This is kind of, he was always unfairly given the moniker of a Hendrix rip-off artist, but he wasn't. He had a lot of his own style. Unfortunately, recently he had to give up playing. He's got some illness. Brilliant guitarist. Some of the runs this guy gets in his playing, especially on the first track, Requiem for a Sinner, which starts off with him, I don't know, he gets some weird effect on his guitar, and then that's probably the closest to Hendrix on this album. That's a great track. Hey Little Lover, which is more of a sort of a commercially kind of track, very stop-start beat to that one. Broken Heart Blues and In My Ways. And then there's the title track, World Anthem, which is quite a lengthy track. Look at Me, Lady, and Try for Freedom. Recorded at Studio Tempo, Montreal in February 77. In fact, from December 76 to February 77. If you want to dive into this guy's work, this is a good place to start. He's made a number of albums, a whole bunch of live stuff as well. Live is where he really comes to the fore. But as studio albums go, this one's pretty good. World Anthem from Mahogany Rush and Frank Marino. This is under the band name, but I mean, it's always Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. He was pretty much that band. Next, we go to a debut album. And I never really reached for this much. And I listened to it and I thought, there's some really good tracks in here. Problem being with this album, the production wasn't that great. It has since recently been re-released, given all the new bells and whistles. There's a whole bunch of bonus stuff. This is the bog standard vinyl release. I don't remember where I got this from. Anyway, Rockarola from Judas Priest, of course, a take on Coca-Cola. There was another cover that came up with some strange creature on it, which was sort of the alternative cover. I prefer this one. And this is a very young, as he's known here, Rob Halford. And this is pre-Leather and Studs days. Glenn Tipton, KK Downing, of course, and the drummer at that stage was a guy called John Hinch. And there, of course, is Ian Hill. So of these guys, it's only really Rob Halford and Ian Hill that are still in the band. Glenn Tipton, who's unfortunately got Parkinson's, does come on occasionally to play with them live. So KK Downing guitars, Glenn Tipton guitars, synthesizers, second vocals, Ian Hill bass guitar, Bob Halford. It's weird saying Bob. Vocals and harmonica, of course, as singers did back in those days. Everybody had played a bit of a harp. And John Hinch on drums. I think John Hinch only lasted for this album and perhaps the second one, Sad Wings of Destiny. Some of the tracks in here, they do suffer from bad production. One for the Road. Some nice guitar work on there. Rockarola, the title track. Winter, which is more of a mellow track. Deep Freeze, Winter Retreat, and Cheetah. It's produced by Roger Bain, who of course had a lot to do with Black Sabbath's early stuff as well. If only this had been given a good boost or a good production around this time when it was released. And this was 1974 on Gull Records. Gull Records was a very small label, but it was a starting point for Priest. So that was on side one. Then you get Never Satisfied, which is probably the best track in here. Good rocker, some nice guitar work from the two guys. Run of the Mill, Dying to Meet You, and Caviar and Meths. How's that for a combo? Most of the tracks are written by KK Downing and Rob Halford with Glenn Tipton, so it's mainly the three of them, and I think one or two with the drummer as well. It says here Al Atkins, and he was the other drummer, so he did have something to do with the debut. So there we go. If you're a completist like I am, you need to get this, and preferably with this rock-a-roller cover. That other cover didn't do much for me. And like I said, it has just recently been re-released, so maybe try and get the new version. Then something totally different, Renaissance. Annie Haslam on the vocals, of course, a beautiful voice of Annie Haslam. And this is probably their biggest selling album, Turn of the Cards, with some stunning tracks on here. That's Annie Haslam over there. Who else was in the band? John Tout on keyboards, Annie Haslam vocals, John Camp on bass guitar vocals, that growling bass. He played a Rickenbacker, very much sounding like Chris Squire from Yes. Terence Sullivan on drums and percussion and vocals, and Michael Dunford acoustic guitars and vocals. So there's no electric guitar here. They didn't have electric guitar for a long time. It was just really acoustic. Great tracks on here, Running Hard, I Think of You, Things I Don't Understand, which is quite a lengthy track, 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Their music, I don't know, you'd class it as sort of progressive, but almost classical progressive, sort of orchestral, symphonic. They had a sound all of their own, and I think Annie Haslam's voice is what really elevated them above some of the other bands. So that was on side one. Then you get Black Flame, Cold Is Being, and the most amazing track ever on this album, Mother Russia. It's another long track at 9 minutes and 18 seconds. That will become a live favorite of the crowds. Fairly big hit for them from this album, Turn of the Cards. It's back. I like that front cover. So there we go, Renaissance, Turn of the Cards. If you want to get into some great 70s prog, I'm not too sure if I think Annie Haslam is still touring today, but Renaissance as a band I think are done and dusted, which is a bit of a shame, but I guess all things come to an end, all good things come to an end. I think that's pretty much it. Yes, there we go, that's what I've been listening to of late, and as you can see, you know, as I said, as the mood takes me, sometimes I want to rock out. A lot of these I hadn't played for some time, especially that Grand Funk that we're an American band. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that video. Please, down below, give us a thumbs up. Any comments, good or bad, will be great to hear from you guys. And if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. We're in March now, so we're moving slowly towards winter, going into autumn. It's a little cooler in the evening, so I've had to chuck something else on the bed just to keep warm. But yeah, it's my favorite time of the year. Autumn and spring. I don't do the extremes anymore. Summer and winter, you know, the old bones. Take it easy, guys. I'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.